You hear the enthusiasm building. You see cheerleaders from years past joining this year's cheerleaders because it is homecoming 1990. And as the crowd begins to roar and roar and roar to the deafening cheers of 95,000 fans, the Volunteers coming out to the gate in orange and white. The crowd comes alive. The Volunteers are ready. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. It's football time in Tennessee.
A great writer once said, "There are two ways to spread the light. Be the candle or the mirror that reflects it." For over 3 decades, John Ward has been reflecting the light. It's a light with a distinctly orange hue. In fact, it's been that way since the day he was born. This is his story.
I grew up in Knoxville, in South Knoxville, where my father was head of Tennessee School for the Deaf, my mother was a teacher there, and that's where I grew up.
Born and raised in the Island Home neighborhood of South Knoxville, John Ward, like most of his neighborhood pals, became immersed in sports. Many autumn afternoons passed while playing sandlot football along the banks of the Tennessee River. Just downstream from the Ward household, men named Caffago, Suffrage, Wyatt, and Butler were spending those same autumn afternoons building a dynasty on Shields-Watkins Field.
Well, my father was a Tennessee fan and attended games when that was possible in the 1930s. And my first exposure to Tennessee athletics was through him.
Though not originally from Tennessee, Herschel Ward was quick to adopt orange and white as his own, and quickly set about spreading the gospel according to Bob, Nealon, that is.
I think one thing that was meaningful to me growing up is I remember that my father would listen to the games on radio. He would, in essence, draw for the deaf students who could not hear the radio. He would draw the game on a chart and then would either sign it or he used language they read his lips. And I, as a youngster, would watch that. And I really think that his ability to visualize for people who could not hear might have helped in the early days that maybe I learned how to visualize a little too.
The lessons of communicating to deaf students the sights and sounds of the gridiron left a lasting impression on John. But Herschel Ward's influence spanned many generations. In 1975, this building on the TSD campus was dedicated to the man who touched so many lives during 41 years of service, Herschel R. Ward. The Ward family value of education made an impression on John and his siblings.
Our objective was to be educated, to spend time and make use of public education, and then someday hope to be able to afford to go to college, which all of us did.
Although his father introduced him to Shields-Watkins Field in the late 30s, it wasn't until the 40s that John became part of the team.
But then when I was in the Boy Scouts, the objective of everybody in the Boy Scouts was to become an usher at Tennessee football games, and Boy Scouts were the ushers. And when I got to do that, that was the crowning accomplishment of my life. And I was an usher for 3 or 4 years, maybe more than that.
The seeds were sown. Already well-versed in the art of communication, John could only dream of one day giving voice to the sport and team he adored.
Really, in the back of my mind, if I could ever do that, I probably thought that when I was a little kid growing up. Boy, if I could ever do Tennessee football on the radio, that'd be the greatest thing. I don't know that I consciously ever thought that.
Maybe it was just a pipe dream. Either way, there was an education to pursue. For 4 years, John attended Knoxville High School. Among his many activities, John fulfilled post-war duties in the school's ROTC program. After graduation, the University on the Hill beckoned.
But my first memory of John was sitting with Haywood Harris in the back of a political science class, and I always sat in the back too, and I didn't know them at that time. And they were sitting back there talking, and I'm sure about sports.
We weren't good students at all. In fact, I think one of the professors there, sort of the head of the department, as a matter of fact, thought that we weren't serious about becoming educators, and he was probably right.
John's enthusiasm for sports continued to occupy more of his time, whether in or out of class.
It started when we were students on campus in the early 50s, and we would tape record on an audio tape recorder the fraternity intramural basketball games in the old Alumni Memorial Gym.
Then we would go back to the fraternity house and would listen to the tapes. You know, it was just a college thing to do.
He would be the play-by-play announcer, and then I would add the color commentary to it, and then I would do some play-by-play, and it was just strictly for fun, because after the games, then he would play the tapes back for his fraternity brothers, and I would play my tape back for my fraternity brothers, and it was done strictly for laughs. I mean, there was nothing else other than just sort of a hobby.
He'd get a table at one end of the floor and broadcast the game just to himself and to a tape recorder while the game was going on. And actually, this looked kind of peculiar out there, a guy broadcasting a game with nobody, with it not being going over the air and with nobody aware really of what he was doing over there. But John was so serious about becoming a broadcaster and being prepared when he got the opportunity. He knew when the opportunity came along, he'd just have one chance if he had that. And he made sure that he was ready when the time came.
The time would come eventually. In the meantime, John would simply enjoy the college atmosphere and spend time developing lifelong friendships. At times, however, you might say he and his friends went a little overboard.
John about got us killed one time while we were in college. We bought a boat together. We bought a cruiser. And one day we decided we'd go through the locks down at Fort Loudon. Anyway, we got, they started lowering the water in the lock so that we could go into the next level of the lake. And John all of a sudden came up with this great idea, since we were being tossed around so much on the water, that he would tie the boat to the side of the lock. And consequently, after about 30 seconds after he had tied it, we were pointed nose down, ready to fall into the water to an instant death.
John survived the nautical mishap to realize he wasn't cut out for the high seas. Those around him, however, had no problem identifying his true talents.
In working with John and doing those things, it was very, very apparent that he had the three things that you have got to have when you want to be a great sportscaster in radio play-by-play. First thing you have to have is a mind like a steel trap. Second thing you have to have is an inherent sense of drama. And the third thing you have to have is you have to have an innate sense of fairness, sportsmanship. And in working with John, it was very, very apparent that he had the whole package.
He had what it took, but a critical link in his evolution came when he took a job at the Knoxville Journal.
During my days at the university, I was a copy boy, which I don't know, that doesn't fit anymore in the business because of computers and all that bit, but the copy boy was the low man on the totem pole. And the copy boy would, when somebody wanted coffee or you wanted to bring in a meal, they say, "Ward, go get coffee." That's what I did. At 40 cents an hour is where I started. I did that for 3 or 4 years. In those days, 40 cents an hour wasn't all that bad to somebody who had absolutely nothing, which is what I had. And it helped pay some of the expenses of going to school. Then, when one of the writers in the sports department, I think probably it was Haywood Harris, who was a sports writer, and I was a copy boy. He had been a copy boy. And he maybe left or whatever, I don't remember specifically, but they said, "Ward, would you like to become a sports writer?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." So I wouldn't have to go get coffee. I could tell whoever the copy was, go get me coffee. So I got a raise and got the job to 75 cents an hour. And that lasted a year or two.
John continued burning the candle at both ends, as a law student by day and sports reporter by night. It was in the position of sports writer that John's big break presented itself.
Each of us was assigned at the Knoxville Journal to go out and cover a high school game on Friday nights. What happened that week, the station manager from WKGN came by the office, told Ben Bird that they were looking for an announcer to broadcast the high school game, that something had happened to the announcer they planned to have for the game. And Bird looked over at John Ward and says, "There's your man."
And he said, I happen to be in the sports bar. He said, "Do you know anybody who can broadcast this game? The sports announcers left town." And I said, "I'm covering that game for the Journal. I'll just broadcast it," joking. And it so happened that a newspaper man always gets to a game about 2 minutes before it starts. The radio guy gets there an hour to get nervous. So I got there 2 minutes. I said, "You're supposed to be on. You're doing the game. You're doing the game." So that's when I started broadcasting the game.
Once behind the mic, John discovered he had true talent for radio. Many of his friends were discovering he also had quite a sense of humor.
One thing people probably don't know about John is that he was a newscaster at one time on WKGN. He handled the 6 o'clock news every night. It was a low-budget program, really. John had the AP wire, and that was about it. So in order to sort of spruce up the broadcast, he would read a bulletin, then he would get me on the phone to be whoever was in the news that particular day. I had to sort of try to copy the voice of what I thought somebody would be. For instance, he'd be talking about a murder in Chicago, and I would all of a sudden be Lieutenant Tony Antonini of the Chicago Police Force, and I would tell about the crime scene and so forth. Then maybe a couple of days later, the British ambassador of the United States would make some kind of a statement. But anyway, we were finally discovered. Somebody commented that the British ambassador sounded a lot like me, so we stopped that after about a month or so.
The broadcast was not carried anywhere except in Knoxville. So if a team from Ohio came in here, no one knew who they were. So he would take and give his friends names. He would have one of his friends, Hayward Harris or someone like that, playing quarterback on the other team. And of course, all his friends would listen to see what names he was going to use for the other team. And he got all his friends to listen just to see what position they were playing.
More than just his friends were listening. John was developing a loyal following. And because of his success on the radio, the end was near for his budding career in journalism.
So Mr. Smith called me into his office, the editor of the Knoxville Journal. And he said, "How much are you making?" I said, "I'm making 75 cents an hour." He said, "We're going to give you a raise because you've done a very good job for us. We're going to raise you to, say, $2 an hour, whatever." And I said, "Boy, that's terrific. I really appreciate that." And he said, "And you're fired."
It wasn't so much that he got fired, it was more like a transfer because the Smith family owned both the radio station and the newspaper.
And I'll never forget, he said, "Your future is not in the newspaper business." And I said, "Okay."
As it turned out, John's future was about to take an unexpected turn.
Well, I was drafted when I got out of law school. That was one of the reasons I went to law school, is that I thought maybe I would be able to dodge the draft. Didn't work.
But fate would step in to shape John's career further. While stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, John would be assigned to duty under a general who happened to have more than a passing interest in America's pastime.
He said, we want you to broadcast the games on Armed Forces Radio or wherever it was, I said, "Great," because I thought that would get me out of doing other things, which it did. So I became very close to General Lynch. And so when they had the World Baseball Tournament, they came in and they had the World Series of Army baseball at Fort Benning. And he said, and they were going to bring in their announcers and whatever, and General Lynch said, "Private Ward will broadcast the games." And Private Ward broadcast the games.
While still in the service, John received word from WKGN that his old post behind the microphone broadcasting high school football games would be waiting for him when his tour of duty was complete.
So I got out of the Army 3 months early and came back and did high school football games. And then the radio station then got the rights, I think that year, I'm pretty sure that year, to Tennessee basketball. And so I did the Tennessee basketball games.
It was John's first taste of broadcasting Tennessee sports. And unlike today's game, chartered jets and first-class accommodations were not standard fare. This was a different era.
There were no charter planes. There were no charter buses. there were cars. And the coach had a car, the assistant coach had a car, and then I had a car. And so we would meet wherever we met and say, okay, Ammerman, you and Termolen and whoever else, you go with Ward, I'll take him. And so that's the way we traveled. And I said, well, what am I getting out of this? Because I was interested. Said, well, you get mileage. Well, I never got a penny. I never got a cent for gas. And half the time, of course, I'm having to buy all their meals. You know, the players, they don't have any. That's the way we traveled. And it was funny. It wasn't too funny then, but actually it was funny. It was funny because, you know, the players were priceless. And we would have all kinds of problems where, you know, a car got lost or whatever. But that's the way we traveled. And we'd show up at the game. We'd usually get there the day before, I guess. I don't even remember that. I'm sure we had hotel rooms. I don't know how that worked either. Sure, I paid for that.
John quickly took on more and more responsibility at WKGN. Broadcasting alone was not enough. Soon he was program director and then sales executive for the station. His talent and versatility soon got the attention of local advertising agencies.
Hello, I'm John Ward. Welcome to the film department of Lavage & Davis.
I was offered an opportunity with an advertising agency, and part of the deal was that I could not broadcast, that I had to devote full time to the advertising agency, which was right. I didn't like it, but that was right.
We established this TV department so that we could produce for our clients TV commercials and full-length films of high quality in less time at lower cost.
John Ward was kind of the creative director, the director, period. He could sit down with a piece of paper and throw it in a typewriter and come up with a piece of copy quicker than anybody ever met. He would write the commercial, shoot the commercial, edit the commercial.
Concise and effective communication was the common denominator in John's professional education. The art of film editing would add a chapter to his communication curriculum.
You've got 1,000 feet of film, and you've got to reduce that to 34 feet of film because that's the commercial. Okay, all of a sudden, you have to say, I've got to throw away over 900 feet of film that's good to get 34 feet of film that's great and will tell the story. Or when you broadcast a football game, there are hundreds of things you could say at a football game. Hundreds of things that you could say that you cannot say because you don't have time. So a play-by-play announcer has to have the ability to edit out all that great stuff and only talk about, in his mind, what is the most important stuff. So the two really are sort of going hand in hand.
Speaking of hand in hand, not only did John become an ace ad man while at Lavage & Davis, it was at the agency that John met and married Barbara. While at Lavage & Davis, John produced many successful campaigns, but none more memorable than the ads he created for Lay's Meats.
Lay's, 3 little pigs sing merrily. We're for Lay's, dum diddle-dee-dee.
If you grew up in East Tennessee, you no doubt can sing along to these words written by John Ward. He did, however, have some help from Nashville's legendary record producer Owen Bradley. When Bradley wasn't making country music history, he dabbled in advertising jingles and was more than happy to pass trade secrets on to John.
He said, well, ain't nothing to write music. He said, go down there to the drugstore and get a record that you like, a song you like, and write words to fit the song, and come back here in a week and we'll record it. So we went down to the drugstore and got Here Comes Peter Cottontail. That was a little record in the drugstore on the rack. In those days, they don't have them anymore. And so I said, Here Comes Peter Cottontail. I forgot now how that. Hopping down the bunny trail. That was the words, right? Yeah. So I said, Lay's, 3 little pigs sing merrily. We're from Lay's, diddle-dee-dee. And that's how it was written. I just didn't come up with that. I wrote, I worked on it for a while, but it didn't take long. So I went back over there to see Owen Bradley. That was about my first big job. I'd been there a year or so, and they said, Ward, you do this. So I was scared to death and went over there. And I thought he'd have to call musicians and everything in, And he said, well, let me hear it. And he went over the piano. And I told him, well, it's written to Here Comes Peter Cottontail. Here's the words. And so he said, And then he went back and he said, that was it. That was it. That's when the song was written. I said, I wrote that. He said, yeah, you wrote that.
Ward continued to concentrate on the advertising business, but there was an offer from a very persuasive man to broadcast Tennessee basketball games.
And then Coach Mears was the basketball coach, and they had spoken to me every year because I did his TV show. I handled the sponsorship of that and everything with the local bank. And he kept saying, we want you to do the broadcast, and I wanted to do them. And so I went to my associates and said, I would like to do the games. They said, well, you know the deal. You know the deal. So I didn't do the games for, I don't know how many years it was, 7 or 8 years.
As it turned out, one of Ward's advertising clients was instrumental in securing the play-by-play duties.
John had to gain the permission of the ad agency, and the only way the ad agency was going to give him permission was if his largest client would give him permission to do the games. And there was a conflict there because their number one competitor was already a sponsor of the Vol network. So John had a battle he had to face, but he figured out a way to work it out.
And it just hit me when I said, well, look, I'm not going to do their commercials. I'm just going to broadcast the games.
That was good enough for the folks at Lay's, and suddenly there was little choice but to allow the voice to seek his destiny. Still, it wasn't a done deal.
There was one more hurdle to cross.
Ward wanted the consent of the man who had been calling Tennessee's basketball games. His name was Lowell Blanchard, and he was not ready to hand over the microphone.
The salesman at the station came to me and said, look, we want you to do the play-by-play. I said, I'm not going to do the play-by-play unless Lowell agrees that I'm going to do the play-by-play. And they said, well, we can let you do one half and Lowell. I said, I'm not going to get any deal like that. I don't want to do that. I said, if we're going to do the deal, I would be interested in do the play-by-play, but I don't want to upset Lowell. But we kept talking, and so we sort of struck it off. Lowell and I got along pretty well after lunch. He said, look, I don't like to do play-by-play anyway. And he said, I'll do the color, and you do the play-by-play. I said, well, that'd be fine with me. And from that point on, we became very, very close friends.
With Blanchard committed to do color, John Ward signed on in the lead role, the voice of the basketball
Coming
Vols.
out of the 1-3-1. McIntosh on the far side. A long looping pass goes to Whitley. Jump shot from 10 feet. Good.
Well, because John had prepared himself while he was in college by doing the intramural games, his first broadcast went over real well, and from then on it went on, and John was determined all along that he was going to be the very best broadcaster that he could be.
The 1964-65 campaign would be his first official season on the Vol network, a season that proved to be a lot of fun, both on the basketball court and in the radio booth, with his newfound color man, and full of color he was.
Blanchard, we get in the room on the road. It's a boring situation. In those days, we played on Saturday and Monday. So you'd go on Friday. You had all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday to sit around the hotel room. And that's boring, except with Blanchard. What Lowell would do, we would have the, as Bud Ford calls them, the soapbox operas. We'd have the soap opera shows on, and we would turn the sound off. And he would play all parts. And we were watching on the TV screen, and Lowell was playing every part. And I can assure you the dialogue was not the same. But then I said, we all hear Blanchard do this. And so it got so people would come to our room, and there would be 10, 15 people sitting around listening to Blanchard perform for 3 hours the soap operas.
Blanchard expanded his repertoire to include his own bawdy versions of other shows. Road trip regulars couldn't wait to gather in the Ward Blanchard hotel room to listen. One of the fans of the soapbox operas was none other than legendary Kentucky basketball coach Adolph Rupp.
And so Coach Rupp came up to our room to watch Meet the Press, which was the sound turned down and people asking questions and Blanchard playing all parts. And from then on, Rupp, on every Sunday, he didn't have to be asked. Rupp was knocking on the door when Meet the Press. He said, go it, let me in here, let me in to watch it.
The Ward Blanchard team called some big wins for the Vols that very first season.
2 points for A.W. He's 11 short of 1,000 in his career.
Led by third-year coach Ray Mears and captain A.W. Davis, the Vols rolled to an impressive 20-5 record and second-place finish in the SEC. It was the beginning of a golden era in Big Orange basketball, and the voice of John Ward told you what time it was.
And tonight, it's basketball time in Tennessee.
Wherever it was, when Tennessee played, when Tennessee walked in, everybody says, there's Tennessee.
Brooks for Tennessee, racing down court, could take it all the way, gives to Ellis. Ellis for a two-hand dunk. Ellis with a double stop. Hahn faking wide, goes under, feeds it back out to Croft. 17-foot one-hander, bottom. Croft saves the drive, bounce pass Wood, 10-foot jumper off the glass. Good. Wood is good, and Tennessee leads 74-59. So lead pass right side, Bertelkamp, 18-footer Bertelkamp off the glass, good. Bertelkamp's good. Carter behind the back feed. Tony White, 15-foot jumper. It's good. Brilliantly. 1 point. Niggins looks for somebody to come open. The pass comes in and put it under by Carter. 28-footer by Carter is good. Tennessee wins the game. Tennessee wins the game.
Just when the Ward and Blanchard team was hitting its stride, the laughter subsided.
He died 3 years later than after that. He passed away, and it's just not right. And I was hurt, and it was painful for me.
When Lowell passed away, Mrs. Blanchard called on John. She leaned on John for a lot of things, and John was very helpful to her. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know, but he was very helpful to Sally Blanchard when Lowell passed away.
Ward never even considered filling the vacant seat behind the color mic. He was on his own, and as his legend grew, so too did Tennessee basketball. The Vols had established themselves as one of the SEC's top programs. Admission into a sold-out Stokely Athletic Center was the hottest ticket in town.
But by 1965, Tennessee basketball had begun to grow. Best documented by the fact that 2 years later, the Armory Fieldhouse was doubled in size to Stokely Athletic Center. And that was a direct result of the impact of A.W. Davis and Coach Mears, who was such, not only an outstanding coach, but was such a promoter that he personally, on his own, got out and almost willed people to come to the games.
When I came here, there was no enthusiasm. We only had 400 people in the gym the last game of the season before. We had to build. We had to build there, and he was part of this building because he came 2 years after I was there, and he had to help me build, and he did it by his sayings like, give him 6. Who else says that? I've never heard it before. Where'd he come up? I don't know. I never asked. I said, where'd you come up with? Give him 6, you know. That's in football. Basketball, bottom, say. When we won our first championship, we got nice rings and so on, but on that ring, I designed the ring, and on the ring, I put a little hoop and a net, and in the bottom of it, I wrote the cross. I didn't say Ward or anything. I said bottom. And this is the way I felt. I thought he had a lot to do with us winning the championship.
It was Barnum and Bailey and part Hollywood. If Mears was the ringmaster, Ward was the show's MC. The Vols and their colorful coach created almost as much commotion on the road as they did at home, and Ward was there to describe all the hoopla to everyone listening.
When we had a home game, they'd tape it, and they'd play it back 10 o'clock that night, and of course I would hear John Ward. Normally I wouldn't hear him because I was coaching, but I would hear John Ward. He knew exactly what I was doing. The other team would put in a diamond and one, which is a very unusual defense. He would catch it faster than I would catch it.
He just painted a beautiful word picture of what was happening on the court. He could see things that people were doing away from the ball. He understood the game.
The picture Ward painted for his listeners of Vol basketball broadcasts would span an incredible 4 decades, and he would relay the heroics of Tennessee's most heralded stars, including Dale Ellis, Tony White, and of course, Bernie and Ernie.
Oh, man.
Lead pass inside to King. King spins, shoots over, shot good by King. King of the Volunteers.
He was totally focused, completely on the 94 feet of the basketball court. That was his world, and he was determined to rule.
Rise, lays it back over his head. Oh! Wrapped that one up in orange. An unbelievable move by King of the Volunteers.
Ernie Grunfeld, smart.
Pass in front court, Grunfeld looks to King. Grunfeld drives into the lane, goes for a layup shot. Good! What a move he made! Ernie G of Tennessee.
And he was a wonderful basketball player.
Grunfeld, he's got a shot fake. In closer, 15-footer in the air. Bottom! Goes up for a layup shot. Good! And he was fouled. What a play by Ernie G.
Miles and miles of memories accumulated with each passing era, and the miles traveled most of the time were done the hard way, not by necessity, but by design. It became a tradition for Ward to pass up the convenience and quickness of taking the team charter to road games in favor of driving with longtime companion Ed Bailoff.
And he would not fly. He never flies. He was coming back. Was a merchant for years and years, and I think probably one time flying back from New York or whatever, got in a real rough flight, and he said, "Dear Lord, get me out of this. I'll never fly again." He's never flown again. That's the way he does it. And he had been driving to some games and riding the bus to some games and whatever. And we went on a bus, and they had the boom boxes. The players, this was and that was, and they didn't have ear things. They just played them. And, I mean, everybody had a boom box, and all of them were playing something different, and it was unbelievable. And I said, I was sitting up close to DeVoe. I said, "I can't handle that." And he said, No. I said, "That's part of it, part of it." I said, "That's not part of it." And so we finally got to Athens. I turned to Bailoff. I said, "How was that?" He said, "That's the worst experience of my life." That's the worst. I said, "I can't handle that." And so he took the bus back. It was after the game, and so they went to sleep. We were very happy about that. And from that day on, I said, "I'm not ride that bus anymore." He said, "I'll drive." That's how we started driving.
You're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. Well, don't run into a truck.
This van's got over about 100,000 miles, and I would say 90,000 of it's been on basketball trips.
That it's really 2 hours and 8 minutes to the Edelweiss. I'm going to throw in about 5 minutes for making pictures, so we should be there at 11:21.
We joke around. We've been telling the same stories over and over for 20 years, and we just sort of change the endings a little bit each time.
This is a beautiful drive from here over to Copper Hill. Beautiful.
We always stop at the same places. We buy gas at the same places. We buy ice cream at the same places.
Anybody want a sample? Get you a slab. Well, he's going to get something else here. He wants, what do you want? The chocolate? Fudge. Chocolate plain fudge. Fludge. How much you want of that? 20 pounds?
No.
If we're traveling, wherever we're traveling, we've been there before, and we know all the stops, and that's about the way it runs. It's a routine thing.
Let's eat. It's 11:21. We said it would be here at 11:21. It's now no, we got 30 seconds. Bailoff's greatest line is, "Everybody's got brakes." That's true. He's got brakes.
With all the seasons and all the games, did they ever get lost?
Oh, we got lost. We got lost this year. We go through the 4-lane highway on this little road, 2-lane road. It becomes a 1-lane road. It becomes a gravel road. And so I say, I don't think this is it. I think we're lost. And there was a house over there, and I said, we might go over there and ask them where we are. And he said, no, we're lost. And if we knock on that door, we may get shot. So we turned around and ran over the poor guy's yard and went back to a 4-lane highway and turned left. And that was the road to Athens.
At this time, Ward was the popular voice of the basketball Vols, but was also involved in Tennessee football. His association, however, didn't begin in radio or television. On football Saturdays in Knoxville, Ward's voice could be heard booming across Shields-Watkins Field as the public address announcer. His most memorable game as the PA announcer came when the underdog Vols stopped Heisman Trophy winner Billy Cannon just short of the end zone to preserve a 14-13 victory over number 1 ranked and defending national champion LSU. Fans in the stadium couldn't believe their eyes, but they soon learned their ears would not deceive.
The Doug Dickey Show, exclusive films of the Tennessee Vols, featuring Tennessee football coach Doug Dickey, presented every week by...
In the mid-60s, another opportunity presented itself. Doug Dickey was Tennessee's new head football coach, and Ward was asked to help produce a television show highlighting UT and its new coach. As with most projects, Ward didn't just dabble in it, he dove in head first.
I can remember him running around with a clipboard and a stopwatch, and he was making notes and giving directions like crazy. And there were probably 2 or 3 camera people in the press box and camera people all over the field.
He also knew there was more to it than production. Someone had to get out and sell the show. That someone was John Ward.
Tennessee football is, without a doubt, the biggest single activity in the state of Tennessee. The combination of the University of Tennessee, whose campus is the state of Tennessee, the UT football team, Tennessee's single biggest activity, and a professionally produced TV show in full color, called by newspapers and TV network observers as the smoothest of its kind. All combine to make sponsorship of the weekly show one of the most merchandisable vehicles in the state.
Thanks in part to Ward's efforts, the show was a huge success. Doug Dickey and John Ward, 2 young professionals at similar stages of their lives, developed a special kinship.
He was a young coach. He was a very young football coach. And I was a reasonably young person as far as broadcasting the games is concerned. I was new. We were both new. We were both experimenting. We were both gambling. We were both having the opportunity to fall flat on our face because there was no track record. And so that sort of bonded us, I think.
A yard shy of a first. It'll be second down, a yard to go.
Coach Warren has hit Denny twice. How does he pick his target?
Well, certainly our receivers are numbered on each pass pattern, if it's called in the huddle or automatic at the line of scrimmage. And he goes through a sequence of 1, 2, 3, looking at the receivers to find the one that he wants to throw to.
By 1968, John Ward was firmly established as a Vol Network personality. When it became apparent that veteran Vol Network football announcers George Mooney and Bob Fox were retiring from the airwaves, Ward became the logical choice.
He was doing the coach's show on Sunday. He was doing the coach's show on Thursday nights. So he had that natural tie-in with football. He had been the public address announcer for the stadium. So he was a known quantity, a known entity, and the fans already were digging him.
Well, Coach Dickey, it's bound to be an exciting football season coming up, and I think it's going to be an exciting activity for the insurers of Tennessee.
With his deep affection for basketball, his advertising agency, plus the marketing of the Dickey Show, the question was, did he have the time and desire to broadcast football, too?
Yes, I wanted to broadcast football. Once I got in, I'd always wanted to, even when I was a twerp. And so Coach Woodruff called me into his office, and he said, "Well, Ward, George isn't going to broadcast the games. Would it interfere with you selling the Dickey Show on TV to broadcast the games?" And I said, "I think I can do both." He picked up the phone and he called Dickey, who was down the hall. I'm sure they'd already set this up. And he said, "He says he can do both." And I didn't hear, but I assumed Dickie said, well, okay. And so that's exactly how I was hired.
If one word were chosen to describe John Ward, it would be prepared. Knowing that, it should not seem so unusual that a recording of Ward's first Tennessee football broadcast was recently uncovered.
As the 1967 season gets underway in Los Angeles.
It's a broadcast that never went over the air and occurred a full year before he officially became UT's play-by-play announcer.
Tennessee at the 18. Warren, the quarterback. The give goes to Fulton. Touchdown for Tennessee!
With Ward tabbed as the new football play-by-play voice, the only question was who would be the new analyst. Former Vol co-captain Bill Anderson became one of several former players to be considered.
The other people, for one reason or another, were eliminated. I've forgotten how. And it ended up that Anderson was basically the only one left standing. But we just sort of let things drift. And finally Woodruff called me up and he said, well, what'd you decide? And I said, well, we talked to Bill Anderson. He said, well, he's the man.
Ward and Anderson's first broadcast would set the tone for what would be an exciting and glorious 31-year career together. The 1968 season opener against SEC favorite Georgia was historic in that it was the first college game played on artificial turf.
There is no time left on the clock when Weich fires a do-or-die pass to Gary Chris.
The contest became an instant classic. Tight end Ken DeLong hauled in a two-point conversion to earn a 17-17 tie with the Bulldogs. It was the first of many thrilling plays and games the two would describe over the next 3 decades. They seemed to perfectly complement each other.
Did either one of us audition? No. Did either one of us send in a tape? No. He didn't have any tapes. We just sat down and did it.
Ward supplied the eloquent delivery and precise description, while Anderson added the knowledge and experience from playing the game at its highest level.
I was pretty confident that we could do it, but then you never really know. So we got started, and I'm sure he was as nervous as I was nervous, and we got started. And about during the first half, it was a little rough, but nobody else would know that. I knew that. I knew enough about the business that nobody else would really have realized how rough we were, how ragged we were. And all of a sudden, about the third quarter, in my mind, while trying to keep up with the game, I said, this deal ain't bad. This is going to work.
Ward and Anderson quickly developed a unique and long-lasting chemistry and natural understanding of each other. It was a winning formula that would take little maintenance in the years to come.
We hoped to get through the first game and not really make fools out of ourselves. After we did the first game and we, critiqued it and so forth, then you do the second game, third game, then you finish the year. And then by then I was into basketball, and you do that. By then, just become a habit.
The network began a period of rapid growth and expansion. In 1970, Ward took on a larger and more time-consuming role by directing the marketing and sales efforts of the network. By the mid-70s, Ward's reputation as an announcer grew in the state of Tennessee and spread around the country.
A lot of people write in and say they enjoy the broadcast. A lot of people write in and say they don't enjoy certain things. A lot of people write in and say you're terrible.
In 1976, he was named Best College Announcer in the country by nationwide publications of Los Angeles, whose works were used heavily by people in the betting industry.
To be selected by those people, I don't know anybody who's more knowledgeable. When people say, well, you shouldn't tell people that, a betting outfit picked you. I said, that means more to me than any award I ever got.
Our thanks to the offensive line, the Volunteers of Tennessee, a unit, and a great one at that.
Recognized as one of the top announcers in the country, Ward was approached by other universities, professional sports teams, and national networks. He had numerous opportunities to make more money, locate in larger markets, and assume higher profile positions. Ward, however, remained committed to his business and the University of Tennessee for a couple of basic reasons.
I'm going to be honest with you. One thing, of course, I never wanted to leave. I don't see why anybody would want to leave East Tennessee. To me, there's not any place better to live.
He lived in Tennessee all his life, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand. John Ward could have gone to a network He could have gone to New York. He could have gone to Los Angeles. He had offers from the TV networks and from national radio networks.
I think broadcasting Tennessee football and basketball games on the Vol Network is the best broadcasting job in the country, period. Why take a second-rate job paying you 3 times as much when you can have the first-rate job? That's the way I look at it.
He is one of the most loyal persons that I know to his friends, to the institution for whom he works, and for those things that he believes in.
Through the years, John Ward believed in the University of Tennessee, and in 1994, he and Barbara donated the largest endowment gift ever to the UT Athletic Department. Though John never wanted the figure published, sources confirm the gift was for millions of dollars. It was his way of saying thanks for hiring him to do the best job in America. As the seasons grew, John Ward, along with his partner Bill Anderson, became as much a part of Tennessee football Saturday as the Vols running through the T.
It's football time in Tennessee. Good afternoon, everybody. Tennessee and Vanderbilt playing at Nashville, Tennessee this afternoon. And working with me again today is the analyst on our Vol Network radio broadcast, Bill Anderson, who back in 1955 was the hero of the Tennessee-Vanderbilt game. Do you remember that one, Bill?
Very well, John, but that's been a long time ago.
You were slender and you were very sinewy in those days, still very sinewy.
And slender.
Tell us a little bit about this Vanderbilt team today. What Vol fans can really anticipate from Vanderbilt?
Well, I think you're going to see Vanderbilt putting the ball up in the
A
air.
generation grew up listening to the duo paint priceless memories by describing the pageantry, tradition, and excitement of Tennessee football. The enjoyment of listening to Ward on the statewide stadium became a passion that was passed down in the family to sons and daughters. Ward grew to become a legendary figure, but one that everyone felt like they knew personally. When Tennessee became a favorite of the television networks, Vol fans simply turned down the television volume and turned up the Vol network. Fans lived and died, agonized and celebrated with every descriptive word Ward uttered. As sports writer Larry Woody of the Tennessean once put it, when John Ward talks, people listen.
Gets away from one man, running with the football. Brett True at the 15, still has the ball at the 10. Spinning 3 at the 5. He scores for Tennessee. You can't describe it. There's no way to describe it. Just rack up 6 and give it to Holloway.
Leads the block. Gets 1. 40, 45, 50. Will he go all the way? Yes, sir. 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, 7, 6. Goes to the right side. Big hole opens up. Gets to the 5, to the 10, to the 15, to the 20, to the 25, to the 30, to the 35, to the 40, to the 45, to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 25, to the 20. Running back split. Shula back to throw. Left hand. Out into the flat. Broken up. Was that intercepted in midair? Ladies and gentlemen, what a play by Dale Jones. He was 2 feet away from Mike Shula, and as
Back
Shula
up to the 15, working to the 20, Stutter stepping to the 25, breaking to the 30, outside to the 35, to the 40, to the 45, to the 50, cutting to the far sideline, down to the 45, to the 40, 35, 30, 15, 10, 5, 4,
Powell, right side 40, 45, 50, gets outside 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 60 yards. Jeff Powell, touchdown, Big Orange.
Holloway looking. Holloway will run. Holloway at the 10. Holloway at the 5. Holloway dives. Give him 6. Give him 6 large ones. Over, around, and over the top. Condridge Holloway brings the ball and the crowd to life.
tailback. This is Cobb, up the middle, 20, 25, 30, breaks outside 35, turns it on 40, 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Give him 6, 79 yards, touchdown, Reggie Cobb.
He's at the 40, he's at the 45, he's at the 50, he's at the 45, he's at the 40, he's at the 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Jonathan Jones. Johnny Jones of Munford, Tennessee.
The kick is up. The kick is good. No, it is no good. It is no good. It is no good. Tennessee beats Notre Dame.
The kick is in the air, and the kick this time is no, sir-ree. No, sir-ree. Final score, Tennessee 20, Florida 17. Pandemonium reigns.
Manning speaks. Edges forward, falls down, has no whistle yet. Manning rolling to the right side, motions to throws down into the end zone, and it is touchdown, Tennessee! Marcus Nash. Back to throw is Kelly. Kelly throws the ball full down at the 35, down to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, down to the 5, down to the 4, down to the 3, down to the 2, down to the end zone. Touchdown! Aaron Hayes with a sensational call as Tennessee anticipates the win. Holloway coming to the near sideline, looking into the end zone in trouble. Holloway getting ground. He's going to be pursued. Throws the ball down into the end zone. It is caught by Seegers. There are two. Give Larry Seegers two. Sensational scrambling play. Holloway to Seegers. Tennessee leads Clemson 29-28. I do not believe this game, but one thing is sure, Bill Anderson, it ain't over yet.
No, it was not over yet, but all good things must come to an end. The day that Tennessee fans hoped would never come arrived on June 3rd, 1998.
After consulting with people in the athletic department, the Vol Network, sponsors, and stations, all of us have decided that the upcoming year, 1998-99, will be my final year broadcasting for the University of Tennessee. I have a prepared statement. I'm going to read it verbatim. It's time.
The announcement saddened Vol faithful around the globe. Ward and Anderson were the longest-running radio tandem in college football, and Ward had been the singular voice of Vol basketball since the 1964-65 season. At least fans would get one more year to savor, honor, and thank. His announcement set off a stirring and memorable 10-month-long thank-you farewell celebration. Letters and phone calls poured in at such a volume that the highly organized Ward couldn't keep up with all of them.
Pulled down by Jamal Lewis, who makes the game. Oh, what a juke move. What a move. I do not believe it.
Throughout the 1998-99 season, Ward was revered as part rock star, part royalty, part folk hero.
I had no idea what was going to happen. I thought I did. But the response of fans, listeners, has been overwhelming.
Thank you very much. I'll see you, Andrew.
Over the years, John had established
Appreciate
many
it.
personal
Bye-bye.
rituals. In spite of the hoopla surrounding his final year behind the mic, he was determined to resume his normal game day routine. His tradition of watching the pride of the Southland Marching Band's pregame rehearsal remained intact on this mid-September morning.
They may not let us in. We're about on time.
A full 12 hours before kickoff, John was already roaming the campus. John spent the time, as always, preparing. After reviewing the evening's notes, he took time out to speak to members of the band he adores.
The voice of the Vols, John Ward.
I can't handle it too well, I tell you that. I like your shirt. Yeah. There are thousands of people, believe it or not, certainly hundreds, who are here to see you take that first step. And they'll live another year happy, exhilarated, excited, encouraged, because you take that perfect first step. There is no band like this one. Thank you.
It was a memorable moment for John.
Shut me up. I can't handle it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
As their final season of broadcasting continued, Ward and Anderson's name and faces were hard to miss. The Vol Network's kickoff call-in show site outside Neyland Stadium was packed in all directions for all 6 home games as fans tried to participate in the show, get an autograph, photo, or just one last look at the voice of the Vols and his trusty sidekick. As the season progressed, it was apparent a special year was in the making, both on and off the field. One of the highlights came at homecoming on November 7th, as Ward and Anderson were honored with an all-star tribute and dinner.
People came miles and miles that really weren't going to the game. That might surprise. I know a lot of people in there that I saw and came up and said, "We ain't got tickets to the game."
The gala, titled Give 'em Six, attracted an overflow crowd to Thompson Bowling Arena.
John has told you what had happened over 31 years. Bill told us how or why, because John didn't know, I'll tell you.
It was an emotional and lighthearted day as famous Tennesseans and former Vols turned out to say thank you along with the listeners and fans.
As I said there, that while I wish they hadn't have had that, and I honestly meant that, I wish they hadn't gone to all that trouble to put all those tables out and put all those decorations on the table and hand out all those posies they did to the women and all that stuff. That was too much trouble. But I wouldn't have missed it. And I would not have missed this year and what people have said and felt for anything.
John, I could list all of your awards and honors and never mention your greatest achievement. In the last 30 years, nobody in the state of Tennessee, not Elvis, not Dolly, and not even Peyton, has brought as much joy and drama and excitement to the people of Tennessee as John Ward. So John Ward, on behalf of all my teammates and every basketball player since 1965, for making us better than we were, we thank you from the very bottom of our hearts.
At the gala, country music star Kenny Chesney gave a live, touching performance of a song he had written in tribute to the voice of the Vols. The song, Touchdown Tennessee, was an immediate hit in the volunteer state. It debuted on the Billboard country chart at number 64 with a bullet, unheard of for a regional song. Released as a single, the song amazingly sold over 100,000 copies.
With a voice you could hear all the way to Rocky Top. Play by play for 31 years, it never stopped. And we heard 2015, 10 and 5. Your voice was our eyes, and we could see Touchdown Tennessee. back road ride. It wasn't a long throw downfield to Willie Gault. For a second, no one knew if it was caught. And we heard 2015, 10 and 5. Your voice was our eyes, and we could see touchdown, Tennessee. Your voice painted us a picture of all the losses and the wins. And it's so hard to imagine a game without your voice again. Saying 2015, 10 and 5, your voice was our eyes, and we could see touchdown, Tennessee. So thank you, John. What a run, it's been fun for us all. All the way our hearts pounded when you called. 2015, 10 and 5, your voice was our eyes, and we could see touchdown, Tennessee. So thank you, John.
Last summer, they came to me and said, you know, you're going to have a testimonial or whatever. We want to know exactly what kind of testimonial or special day you want. My answer was none. It would be too much trouble for the people who put it together. And I would verse a moment to say, what a program and presentation they put together. But the main reason that we don't need a special day is every time people listen to a football or basketball broadcast, that is a special day. 350 football broadcasts, 350 special days for us. 647 coaches' TV shows, 647 special days for us. 992 basketball special days. 1,987 special days. And so I said, we don't need another special day. And yet I want all of you to know, sincerely, I would not have missed sharing this special day with all of you for anything in the world.
Later in the season, head coach Philip Fulmer and the Tennessee seniors asked Ward and Anderson to lead the team in the traditional Vol walk to Neyland Stadium before the regular season finale against Kentucky on November 21st. It would be another magic moment.
The Vol walk for me in itself was a very moving time. I cried. Obviously, people could see that. I'm not hiding anything. And I made it a point to go to as many seniors as were hanging around. And I said, I appreciate your asking us to do this. And they said, we wanted you to do this.
Perhaps one of the most surprising and moving events occurred on the road in the final game of the regular season at Vanderbilt. Ward and Anderson took the Vol Network's pregame show, the kickoff call-in show, to Nashville's Centennial Park. An estimated 10,000 Big Orange fans showed up to create a concert-like atmosphere. Tennessee had enjoyed a storybook season in amassing a perfect 11-0 regular season record. The Vols defeated Mississippi State in the SEC championship game in Atlanta to win back-to-back Southeastern Conference titles.
Big points, give him a TD.
The Vols found themselves one game away from their first national championship in 48 years.
So, Vol fans, Seminole fans everywhere, listening throughout the world, know the time is here. A once-in-a-lifetime moment.
It was the game Vol fans had been waiting on for ages.
As across the way, the Volunteers come racing onto the field. What time is it? You know. As Tennessee comes barreling out onto the greensward of the Fiesta Bowl in Tempe, Arizona, it's football time in Tennessee.
Like those fans, John has special memories of the magical night.
For 2 miles about, that was how far it was from the hotel to the stadium, the Fiesta Bowl. And the crowd of Tennessee people in orange, there weren't just a line of 1 or 2 people along the street. I mean, it was just almost like the Vol walk from the Sports Center to Neyland Stadium into the dressing room. Except this was 2 miles long, 2,000 miles from Knoxville, and here, as far as the eye could see, were people cheering Tennessee.
The Fiesta Bowl game against Florida State for the national championship would also be Ward and Anderson's last game together.
Back to throw, looking into the end zone, pass caught, 3, 2, 1, give him 6. Touchdown, Tennessee.
It's just not another game. It really wasn't just another game, but that was our approach.
Field is intercepted. Tennessee at the 45, to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 25, to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Tennessee. D. Wayne Goodrich. Going to throw the ball long downfield for Fearless Bright. It is complete. He makes the catch at the 45. He's at the 40, 35, 30, 25, 20. Just give it to him. Touchdown, Tennessee.
We probably played it down a little too much. That's the only thing I regret. That going into the game, I wanted to make certain that we did not get emotionally involved in the magnitude of the experience to where we were not objective and accurate in reporting the game.
You can count it down with us. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The national champion is clad in big orange. Tennessee 23, Florida State 16.
When the game was over, even when we went down to interview Coach Fulmer, it was just another game.
As the Volunteers win tonight over Florida State in Tempe, Arizona by a score of 23-16. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Now for the coach of the Volunteers, Philip Fulmer, this is John Ward saying so long, everybody, on this, the Vol Radio Network.
That's a wrap.
There was, however, another season to go before the final chapter in the broadcast career of John Ward could be written. Coming off the school's best season in over a decade, enthusiasm for Big Orange basketball had returned to the heady days of the early 1980s. The Vols suffered a couple of early season setbacks, but finally began to get things on track in the most unlikely of all places, Lexington, Kentucky. Tennessee hadn't beaten Kentucky in Lexington since 1979.
Turner almost walks, drives down deep, under he goes for the shot that is up and no good. Rebound Bradley, put back up, it's no good. Rebound Tennessee. It is over. It is over. It is over. Tennessee 47, Kentucky 46. It happened.
In one of the biggest stretch runs in school history, the Vols won 5 straight conference games. The team was in position to capture the SEC Eastern Division title. All the Vols had to do was beat Kentucky again in the last regular season game. In pregame ceremonies before his last broadcast on the University of Tennessee campus, Ward was once again honored. In a charged atmosphere reminiscent of the heydays at Stokely Athletic Center, the Vols defeated its biggest rival and won the SEC East.
Well, Tennessee wins the national championship in football. And this may not be the national championship, but believe you me, beating Kentucky twice in a single season in basketball is close. Kentucky with the basketball into Smith. Smith past the timeline. Down low he goes. The shot is up there. No good. This game is over. The SEC Eastern Division champion is clad in orange. Where have I heard that before?
Again, fate had smiled on Ward. The national championship in football, defeating arch-rival Kentucky twice in basketball, and winning the SEC Eastern Division basketball title. Even the most accomplished pundits would have been challenged to write a better ending. The Vols went on to advance to the second round of the NCAA tournament. As his final radio broadcast was coming to an end, Ward wrapped it up much like he had his previous 1,382 UT broadcasts.
10 days. The final score here is 81-51 as Southwest Missouri State wins over Tennessee. For the coach of the Volunteers, Jerry Green, and for your Vol Network staff from Charlotte, North Carolina, this is John Ward saying so long, everybody, as you listen to Tennessee basketball on the Vol Radio Network.
Finally, after 4 glorious decades, the voice went silent.
I'm a realist enough to know that, particularly in athletics, football and basketball, there is tradition, there are memories, but basically speaking, people now are concerned with what's going to happen, not what has happened. So I don't expect to be remembered as such. If indeed people would look back and say we enjoyed these years, that's what I want them to say. That we had some fun. We couldn't get to one game and it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be, that we had to listen to the broadcast, that actually I sort of felt that we were there. In an overall standpoint, I hope that people will say, well, the broadcasts were objective, fair to both teams, entertaining, enjoyable, accurate, and maybe once in a while they threw in a little something special that we remember, a word here, a word there, a phrase here, a phrase there that we remember, and maybe we won't remember who said it, but we may remember what was said. And if that's what people remember, I'll be happy.
Seconds will tick down. There are now, ladies and gentlemen, 10 seconds to go. We're going to let you count it down as Tennessee will beat Alabama. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final score, Tennessee 35, Alabama 28. Tennessee beats Alabama 35-28. Pandemonium reigns. The goalposts are history. The North goalpost, I think, has just been snapped. Anyway, it's been broken off, and students of the University of Tennessee are tearing at the length of the field north to south. The fans are still here, standing and cheering. It has to be one of the great moments in Tennessee football history.
What means something is that people really, what we've done has meant something to some people. I hate to say that. It's a little boastful. But what we've done has meant something to people, or else they could not say what they say, what they have said, and what they have meant. And say enjoy life. I don't know how I can enjoy life more than what I have with broadcasting the games and meeting the fans and visiting with them. So I probably will not enjoy life as much. But there was one thing I think I've said. One thing I think I've said was, and I believe this, and this is why the decision was the proper one, to end the broadcast, in broadcasting the games. I would much rather quit 3 years too early than 1 second too late. And whenever the concentration and the desire and the love of preparation and travel begins to wane even a tenth of a percent, then I don't want to do them, because that's not right. And so what will happen now, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I'll miss broadcasting the games for sure. I'll miss the fans for sure. Nothing will replace that. Hopefully something almost as good will come along. If it doesn't, what more can you ask? 30 years of doing something that you love to do, and the response of the people for that, you know, most people don't have a year of that. So I'll have no regrets. No regrets. This is the way it should have been.
So many one-word descriptions you could use to sum up a figure who's got his place in Tennessee history in the 20th century. Compelling. John was a strong personality, and that came across on the air.
This was a man that had absolutely amazing ability to be a great sportscaster, radio play-by-play. Now, he was also very good at television play-by-play, but radio play-by-play is another breed of cat.
He almost is like a television camera on radio. He visualizes it and is so good at describing what he sees, you think you're watching the ball game.
As a fan who's away from the program again now, I'm sad because I'll miss him. And when I heard the news that he was leaving, I was like everybody else. It'll never be the same.
He's not just the best here, but he's the best in the daggone world.
John, obviously, when you meet him the first time, comes across with tremendous energy, tremendous intelligence about what he's going to do, and he has tremendous decisiveness about what's going to happen.
Ward and I always went early. If it was a 3 o'clock game, we'd be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. If it was a night game, we'd be there before noon. I doubt that he's changed.
Anybody that knows John knows that he works hard at everything he does.
John demanded perfection, not only from himself, but from everybody associated with the broadcast.
He always tells the network crew is to be prepared and anticipate things that come out of the blue, out of the ordinary, that normally you wouldn't expect. And he had just got through talking to us about that on the pregame before a basketball broadcast. When the power goes out in the arena, complete pitch black, 30 seconds from him going on the air. And I could feel him turn to me during that time period and say, "See, that's exactly what I'm talking about."
He's always pretty superstitious, just like at this last basketball tournament we had. Mr. Bailoff accidentally left his hat that he wore into the arena. He left it in the press room. Well, he asked me to look for it the next day, but the day between games, and I looked all over the arena, I couldn't find it. And he just looked at me and said, "We don't find that hat, our goose is cooked."
John was always ahead of his spotters. I mean, the spotter's just there to watch the ball game in case he needs you. He's normally ahead of you.
The fondest memories I have of John and Bill are traveling, doing the away games. We had great chemistry, and we really had a lot of fun together.
I think the one thing that you realize pretty quickly is that John Ward runs the broadcast. He knows everything that's going on. The first day I was ever on the Vol Network was when Tennessee played Iowa in the '87 Kickoff Classic. And of course, Tennessee won the ball game 23-22, and we're talking about the next game, which is a home game, And I said, and the Vols will be at home next weekend at Neyland Stadium. We go to commercial, everybody's thinking, I'm thinking, hey, I've done okay today. I was 19, almost 20, and I'm thinking this is going good. About this time through the cue speaker, you hear, "Tell Keith it's Neyland, not Neyland. It's Neyland like your knee."
If you really wanted to enjoy the game, the Vol Radio Network booth was not the place to watch it from.
John could create a really intense atmosphere, and we were doing a game at Legion Field in Birmingham, and we'd had some technical problems, so everyone was on edge. Tim Berry, our engineer, had felt the wrath, And sure enough, in the fourth quarter, Ward goes to cue Bill Anderson for a comment. You don't hear Bill Anderson. So we all turn to look at Tim Berry to see what the problem is. And instead of Tim being focused on the game with his hands on the audio board, he instead has them wrapped around a jumbo Frankfurter. And he's not paying any attention at all, and Ward just loses it. But Ward even starts laughing so hysterically that he loses his place in the ball game and almost missed the next play.
If you were listening to the radio broadcast, you would think it was a very calm and relaxed atmosphere, but in reality, it was very intense.
The tradition in those days was to Ed Huster and John Ward and John Majors and myself to play tennis on Friday mornings, particularly for home games. And I always thought it was a bad omen if Majors lost, so I can't say that I really tried that hard, but Ward and Majors went at it. If they were on opposite sides of doubles, usually it was Huster and me, or Huster and Ward against Majors and me, and if Majors was on my team, I wanted to win because I thought that was a good omen, and John just battled him like it was Wimbledon or the U.S. Open.
When you're on the phone with John, whenever he's through speaking to you, that's when the conversation ends. And he may just hang up, he may go into a whole soliloquy, he may, who knows, but when it's over, it's over. Just forget it.